62. Removal from office and other remedies for dereliction of duty in office or misconduct. The presiding officer and other officers have the duties set forth in this manual, see 47, and in the organization's bylaws. This section covers procedures available if they neglect those duties, abuse their authority, or engage in other misconduct that calls into question their fitness for office. This section also covers removal from office at the pleasure of the Assembly when the bylaws permit such removal. Remedies for abuse of authority by the chair in a meeting. Making and enforcing points of order and appeals. In attempting to remedy any incorrect or abusive act by the chair at a meeting, the first step is to remember to raise a point of order as soon as the breach of the rules occurs. For example, some important rules of parliamentary procedure are A, that the chair must recognize any member who seeks the floor while entitled to it, see 42, B, that after a member has properly made a motion that is not dilatory, see 39, the chair must either state the question on it or else rule it out of order for a specified valid reason, require that the wording be clarified or be submitted in writing, or declare that it is not before the Assembly for lack of a required second, C4, and C, that the chair cannot hurry through the proceedings so quickly as to deprive the members of their rights to debate and to introduce secondary motions, C43.7. So, if the chair ignores a member seeking the floor while entitled to it, ignores a properly made non-dilatory motions, gavels through a motion in an improper attempt to cut off debate, or violates any other rule, any member may immediately raise a point of order. To raise a point of order, a member rises and, without waiting to be recognized, immediately address the chair, saying, "I rise to a point of order," or simply, "Point of order." The chair must then ask the member to state the point, and after the member does so, the chair is obligated either to rule whether the point is well taken, briefly stating the reasons for that ruling, or to submit the question to the Assembly, C23. Immediately after the chair makes a ruling, any member who disagrees with it may then move an appeal, unless another appeal is already pending, or an appeal would be dilatory because there cannot possibly be two reasonable opinions on the question. The member does this by rising and, without waiting to be recognized, addressing the chair, saying, "I appeal from the decision of the chair." If the appeal is seconded, the chair must state the question on it, clearly explain the exact parliamentary question at issue, allow any permissible debate, and put the question to a vote, as shown in 24. These procedures enable the majority to ensure enforcement of the rules unless the chair fails to respond to and resolve the point of order, fails to respond appropriately to any appeal, or fails to act in accordance with the Assembly's decision on the appeal or on a point of order submitted by the chair to the Assembly. If the chair ignores a point of order that is not dilatory, the member can repeat the point of order a second and third time, and if the chair still ignores it, the member standing in his place can immediately put the point of order to a vote without debate. The question may be put as, "Is the point of order that blank well taken?" If the point of order was that the chair improperly ignored another motion, the member may, instead of repeating the point of order, repeat the original motion, and if it is seconded and the chair still ignores it, may, standing in his place, put the ignored motion to a vote without debate. Likewise, if the chair ignores an appeal appropriately made and seconded, note, an appeal is not allowed from the chair's ruling on a question about which there cannot possibly be two reasonable opinions, see 24.3.2b, and is not in order in certain other circumstances, 24.3.2a and 24.5-8. But in such cases, the chair must announce that the appeal is not in order for the relevant reason, not simply ignore the appeal, unless the appeal is dilatory, as in 39.1-4. Back to reading. A member can repeat the appeal, and if, despite it being seconded, the chair ignores it again, the member can repeat it a third time, and if it is again seconded but still ignored by the chair, the member can immediately, standing in his place, put the appeal to a vote without debate. The question may be put as, "Shall the decision of the chair be sustained?" Removal of presiding officer from chair for all or part of a session. If the chair fails to act in accordance with the Assembly's decision on an appeal or on a point of order submitted to a vote of the Assembly, or otherwise culpably fails to perform the duties of the chair properly in a meeting, the Assembly may employ measures temporarily to replace the chair with another presiding officer expected to act in accordance with the will of the Assembly. If the offending occupant of the chair is an appointed or elected chairman pro tem, see 47.11.2 a motion can be made to declare the chair vacant and proceed to elect a new chairman. Such a motion is a question of privilege affecting the Assembly, 19, and is an incidental main motion requiring a majority vote for its adoption. Note: once such a motion is made and seconded, the chair must state it, and then, since it refers to the presiding officer in a capacity not shared in common with other members, the chair must be turned over to the secretary or secretary pro tem. The new occupant of the chair then presides during consideration of the motion to declare the chair vacant and proceed to elect a new chairman. The new occupant continues to preside until the result of the vote on that motion is announced, and if it is adopted, until the election of the new chairman is completed. If the presiding officer refuses or fails to turn the chair over as required and ignores a point of order on the issue, or ignores or does not abide by the decision on an appeal or a ruling on the point of order, the motion to declare the chair vacant may be put to a vote by its maker as explained in 62.8-9 above. In such a case, the motion is undebatable. Back to reading. If the chair is not an appointed or elected chairman pro tem, a motion to declare the chair vacant is not in order. However, a motion can be made to suspend the rules so as to take away from him the authority to preside during all or part of a given session. Note: this is true even if the bylaws contain a provision to the effect that the president shall preside at all meetings, since such a provision is clearly in the nature of a rule of order, which may be suspended even if in the bylaws. See 221. Back to reading. When such a motion is made and seconded, after stating the motion, he must turn the chair over to another following the procedure described in 43.29, and the remedy for refusal or failure to do so is that the motion may be put to a vote by its maker. Any one motion to suspend the rules that might limit the authority or duties of the presiding officer during a meeting can remain in effect, at most for one session. See 812 and 816. Therefore, in order to prevent the regular presiding officer from presiding during subsequent sessions, the motion to suspend the rules would have to be renewed and separately adopted at each of the sessions. Moreover, since suspend the rules applies only when an assembly wishes to do something during a meeting that it cannot do without violating one or more of its regular rules, 25.1 emphasis added, the motion cannot be used to remove from the presiding officer, even temporarily, any administrative duties, those related to the role of an executive officer that are distinct from the functions of presiding over the assembly at its meetings. Consider 4720. If the motion to suspend the rules is adopted by a 2/3 vote, then, unless the motion names a new occupant of the chair, the ranking vice president, or in the absence of the vice president, an elected temporary presiding officer, see 4711.3 and 4713, has the duty of presiding through the end of the session or any shorter period specified in the motion to suspend the rules. A permanent removal of the presiding officer and removal of the authority to exercise administrative duties conferred by the bylaws requires the procedure described above. Removal from office. Except as the bylaws may provide otherwise, any regularly elected officer of a permanent society can be removed from office by the society's assembly as follows. If the bylaws provide that the officer shall serve for blank years or until their successors are elected, the officer in question can be removed from office by adoption of a motion to do so. The vote required for adoption of this incidental main motion is A, a 2/3 vote, B, a majority vote when previous notice as defined in 1044 has been given, or C, a vote of a majority of the entire membership, any one of which will suffice. A motion to remove an officer from office is a question of privilege, 19, affecting the organization of the assembly, and so also is the filling of any vacancy created by the adoption of such a motion. Note, the assembly normally cannot proceed to fill the vacancy created by removal of an officer immediately, since notice is a requirement, see 32.7. If the president is removed from office, the vice president thereby succeeds to the presidency, creating a vacancy in the vice presidency which requires notice to fill. If it is desired to fill a vacancy that may be created by removal, previous notice may be given in advance of the meeting at which removal is contemplated that, should removal of the officer occur, the resulting vacancy may be filled at that meeting. Back to reading. If, however, the bylaws provide that officers shall serve only a fixed term, such as for 2 years, which is not a recommended wording, see 5628, or if they provide that officers shall serve for blank years and until their successors are elected, an officer can be removed from office only for cause, that is, the neglect of a duty in office or misconduct in accordance with the procedures described in 63, that is, an investigation committee must be appointed, charges must be referred, and a formal trial must be held.